Hi, everybody. This is Jill with Pelotonia. I wish you were in front of me, but I am so excited um, to be in front of you and kicking off our very first Pelotonia Live. It's been a couple of weeks since our office has been open. I'm sure days, weeks for all of you as well, since your lives have looked a little differently, and certainly the way that you have been able to engage with the Pelotonia community has looked a lot different. But on behalf of the entire staff at Pelotonia and our board, I just want to say thank you. It's been so fun and so comforting to see all the nice notes that have been shared, not just to us, but in supporting the members of our community who need it most and stepping up with friends and neighbors, whether they need a grocery or a toilet paper delivery. Whatever it is, it's been really heartwarming to see all of the kind community anecdotes that have happened amidst this unprecedented time. So we had the idea to try and bring all of that good energy together. And so this week we launched a new microsite as a part of the Pelotonia website experience. And you can view it right now and for the rest of the year at pelotonia.org/rise. And if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, it's a really great resource if you just want to put a smile on your face and see what some other people in our community are doing just to spread positivity during this time. So I encourage you to check it out. I'll share a link at the end of the broadcast here. But what we're here to talk about today is all things Pelotonia, and to bring a special guest and friend of the organization, Ethan Zohn, on in just a moment here. But before we do that, just a couple quick things I want to make sure everybody has also seen this week. So we sent out a lengthy email yesterday to the community. Number one, sharing the Rise website that I hope you all check out. Number two, sharing a new way that we're going to be deploying some support in the community. So all of the merchandise that is available on our shop site for the next 2 months, so until June 1st, a little bit more than 2 months here, we're going to be deploying all of the profits from that to support healthcare workers. So that might look like food, coffee, beverages, other methods of support, because we know that healthcare workers in our community at Ohio State and at the James are working around the clock to plan for scenarios that all of us know that we have, they have our best interest at hand, and that we are in good hands with them kind of at the forefront of this planning and of this crisis. So I'm really excited about that. We also launched yesterday a partnership with some really great local partners in Columbus, Roosevelt Coffee, Jenny's Ice Cream, Hot Chicken Takeover, and Homage. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody, rattling that off the top of my head, but it's really exciting. We'll share a link to the page after this broadcast, but members of our community and all around the country really can donate so that meals are deployed to those in need. They'll be prepared by local partners who could really use that business right now. And then when the meals are deployed, we'll all be helping just to give away some little gifts and incentives to those who made the meals possible. So without further ado, I am going to invite somebody up on screen that you all know very well. This is our very first broadcast, so bear with us. Any technology? Oh, there we go. It's working. Perfect. Hi, Doug.
How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
Likewise. Thanks for the intro, and thanks to everybody for joining.
Of course. I'll kick it to you just to share with our friends tuning in today. It looks like we have 71 people who are watching right now, which is cool. Those numbers will continue to grow. On how you're feeling, and what about Pelotonia Pride is making you smile right now?
Awesome. Thanks, Jill. Thanks for organizing this. Thanks to everybody for joining. It's amazing to see all these familiar faces and names on the screen. We're super excited to have Ethan, and while he gave me a momentary pause recently when he said he couldn't hear us, he now says he's in. So I'm going to introduce him in just a minute. But first, I just want to say a special thanks to our partners at the James and the Wexner Medical Center, and to truly anyone who is in the healthcare field right now, anyone who is a first responder, police officer, EMS. There are just so many people who frankly, are risking their lives for the betterment of all of us and the community at large. And we are beyond grateful to know them and to partner with them. And we're thinking of them today and always. And I also want to give a shout out to all the survivors and family members who are on this call. We know that individuals who are currently receiving cancer treatment and many who have received treatment in the past have suppressed immune systems and thus are more vulnerable during this time in dealing with COVID-19. And that's one of the reasons why we launched a research effort yesterday with our partners at the James, because there are so many unanswered questions and truly some exciting things that the researchers at the James want to pursue in fairly short order to understand better what those risks are and how we can mitigate those risks for individuals who are vulnerable. So more on that later, but we're thrilled to have Ethan today. He needs no introduction. Many of you have met him over the last few years. He's ridden in Pelotonia the last 3 years. Ethan and I go way back, and in so many ways, truly so many ways, his life is a metaphor for some of the things we're dealing with now as a community and as a society. And that's why we really wanted to kick off Pelotonia Live with Ethan. So welcome, Ethan, from New Hampshire.
How you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
It's great to see you. I love the facial hair. I love the t-shirt. I love the smile more than anything. So let's just start. I mean, you were with us last August. And it was actually touch and go whether you were going to be able to be with us. And in August, you weren't able to really give us any explanation of why that was, but explain what you've been up to since last August.
Well, there was a moment where I didn't know if I'd be able to ride or, host the MC the opening ceremonies because I was playing the game of Survivor. So last May, we went and we filmed Survivor Season 40, Winners at War, where they brought back 20 of the most popular winners of all time to compete again in Survivor, and not for $1 million, but for $2 million. So if anyone out there is not watching the show, I don't know what's wrong with you. You got to watch the show Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. CBS. But anyway, so I was filming Survivor, and I just didn't know if my body would be capable enough of actually riding a bike. But I was there. I made it happen. I wouldn't miss it for the world, Doug.
I mean, we all need content these days. So Wednesday night, we should all be tuning in and glued. I mean, let's go back just for those who aren't as familiar with your background. I mean, you not only, participated in Survivor Africa, many, many years ago. Was it 2004?
2001.
2001.
2001.
And I mean, a long time ago. So you had that experience in terms of the game of it, but the isolation associated with it and the competition associated with it, and being on your own, really, and trying to form these allegiances and these friendships and sort of work the game. But then you had your own cancer experience that brought a whole nother set of opportunities for isolation, unfortunately. And so you have such a unique perspective. I mean, what are you thinking about these days when you think about social isolation and sort of what the world is dealing with at this moment?
Yeah, thanks. So I feel, I'd just like to say, in a good way, we're all going through the same thing together at the same time. And I think that's a positive you can look at around what's going on in the world right now. We all have to take care of ourselves, socially isolate ourselves, not work, whatever's happening to everyone. We're all doing it at the same time. We can commiserate, we can communicate, we can talk to each other, we can support each other, build that community. However, the difference between cancer, I felt, was when I was going through cancer. I had a rare form of Hodgkin's lymphoma. I went through, the traditional chemo, radiation. I had a stem cell transplant, which failed. And then I had to do it all over again, and then had a second stem cell transplant. And part of the recovery of having a stem cell transplant, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is you kind of got to stay in isolation. You're in the hospital for 30 days, in a bubble, I like to call it. When you're released from the hospital, they want you to be like pretty much isolated for 100 days post-transplant, or at least that was like when I was going through it. And then post that, you're still living a socially isolated life, no public places, no subways, no restaurants, all that stuff. And, I definitely felt the stress of being alone, emotionally, physically, spiritually, socially. And I definitely developed some techniques on being in isolation, whether I learned that from Survivor or I learned that from, just going through it myself, or my wife, helped me a little bit with the whole, dealing with anxiety. And so I feel that I'm an expert at surviving. I'm an expert at being in isolation. And for me, it was a very difficult time in my life to be in that state.
Yeah. I know we didn't talk about this yesterday when we chatted, but how is Lisa doing, and sort of how does she deal with this experience?
Deal with me being around all the time.
Deal with you for sure, but
God bless her, first of all. Well, I think I often say, like, and I know there might be a lot of cancer survivors listening to us here today. And I've come from a perspective where, for going through cancer for me, it wasn't easy. But when a doctor tells you to do something, or, you'll die, you pretty much do it. There's not much choice there. And for me, when I survived cancer, that's when the real issues came, to a front for me. The anxiety, the fear. I like to call those the what if scenarios, that I just got on a crazy loop of destructive thoughts and ruminating over all these what if scenarios. What if the cancer comes back? What if I die? What if I never get married? What if I never have kids? All these things, I just started obsessing about them, and I wasn't living a life. I was just sitting in isolation, obsessing over what may happen. And I feel like some people may be going through a similar situation right now with the how fragile, jobs are, and economy, and your kids are home, and homeschooling, and just there's so much stuff going on, and you can just get in these thoughts of trying to figure out what's going to happen. And we developed a little technique that I'd love to share with everyone, just because it was very helpful for me. Is I would literally take that what if scenario. Let's say, what if I get coronavirus? Let's go through that. Well, I would literally, what if I get coronavirus? I'd take a piece of paper and I'd write out a plan of every single thing I would do if I got the virus. Okay, I'd call my mom. I'd go to the doctor. I'd take the medicine. I would sit at home. I would isolate from my wife. I'd write down the plan, and then I'd file it away. And so then the next time I started thinking about this what if scenario, I'd be like, oh, I already figured it out. I wrote it down. It's in the file. I take it out. I look at it. And then I can just put it away, and I can move on with my day. I got it out of my head. I got the anxiety out of myself. I wrote it down. I figured out a plan. And for me, that was just a huge relief. And I would do this like 3, 4, 5 times a day with different things. I have a shoebox full of these what if scenarios. But for me, it helped me really get through these scary situations with cancer, and even preparing to go on Survivor, which happened. And then even now with this Corona stuff, I feel I'm making plans on what if scenarios. What if I can't drive?
Control.
What?
It gives you a sense of control at a time when you feel like things are all happening around you and you're reacting to things that are out of your control. Planning and that what if scenario planning can give you a sense of comfort.
Exactly. Yeah. And I did, with cancer, you feel very out of control. I've never felt more out of control in my life, because there's something inside you going on that you really can't control. So what I did try to do is I tried to control everything around myself, my exercise, my eating, the people I was hanging out with, the what if scenarios, the anxiety. Those are the things I could control when I wasn't able to control the actual medical side of myself inside my body.
I mean, we were joking yesterday that, you almost have prepared for social distancing more than anyone in the world, maybe, given, what was your mental state when you were isolated the second time for cancer? On the one hand, you were prepared, but mentally, you're one of the most positive people I know, but how did you sort of go into that experience the second time around?
It was difficult. The first time around with cancer, it's new. I had a lot of hope. I'm going to survive this. I'm going to beat it. I'm going to crush it. And I did, but then the cancer came back and you feel like a little bit like a failure. You know, like I had high hopes of being this strong guy, this maybe an inspirational person out there sharing our story like you. And then it comes back and you feel like, oh my God, I just failed at this thing. And so when I was going into the second stem cell transplant, my mental state literally was I was getting ready for a battle. I did the best thing. I got myself in shape mentally, physically, spiritually to face this battle with cancer. So I was working out, I was seeing a shrink, I was meditating, I had vision boards, I was eating well, and I always realized, as we have a lot of athletes out here, cyclists, I was a soccer player, and I always, when I was playing soccer at a decent level, I always, after I went through a training session where I did either yoga or some meditation or sports psychology or visualization techniques, I was a much better athlete. So I brought that entire technique into my fight with cancer. And I just tried to continue the same stuff, because when my body and my mind are working in harmony together, you know, I was a better athlete. Maybe I'd be a better cancer survivor at the same time. So that was my philosophy going into the second time around. So I figured out how to work out in small spaces. You know, I was communicating with friends. Once again, I saw a therapist. I had meditation, vision boards, all that stuff. I did everything in my possible to help control the environment around me. And I tried to, you know, it pays to have a positive outlet, don't get me wrong. But when your entire team of doctors try multiple ways of healing that don't work, like, you panic, you freak out. That's just a natural feeling. So for me to be able to communicate with other people and to share my feelings, both good and bad, and then as well as working out and eating well, I think that was a huge help for me going through the second time.
Yeah, makes sense. Again, I think that sense of control, whether it's your diet, whether it's your exercise, and I think even right now, I mean, we talk a lot about we need to be focused on helping other people, and I think there's a therapeutic nature to that for sure. And at the same time, you have to take care of yourself. You know, I mean, if you aren't feeling great, it's hard to either be a leader of an organization or people, or even to have the energy and stamina to reach out and help others. And that's physically, emotionally, I mean, sort of the whole gamut. I mean, what other tools did you develop as part of your sort of survival guide, given everything you've been through?
That, you hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, I kind of live by the saying these days is like, never let a crisis go to waste, because it's an opportunity to do some really important things. And there's scientific data and research, which I can't quote right now, but I could Google it for you, that like focusing on the plight of other people helps you heal as a human being. So I was like, all right, I'm going through this horrible situation. I got cancer. It's not so much fun, but maybe I can use this horrible crisis in my life to help other people out there. And maybe that will give me a little bit of justification of why this happened to me, or it may distract me from the reality of what's going on in my body. But I know that helping others or sharing the details of my life could just help me give a sense and purpose of what was going on in my own self. So I truly believe at this special time with the coronavirus, when everyone's in isolation, helping others, whether it's calling a friend, sending balloons to a hospital, making masks whatever you can do to help someone else, donate to Pelotonia, buy gear, whatever it is, that for me made me feel better. That was one of the techniques that I used to get through these hard moments.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, we talk a lot at Pelotonia about the act of expressing gratitude. You know, when you express gratitude, one, it forces you to think of someone or some entity that you're thanking and you're grateful for. But there is something very healing and very therapeutic that happens when you're doing that. And you don't do it for that reason. But I think at times like this, when we are physically isolated, it doesn't mean we have to be socially isolated.
Yes.
And so, you know, what are the things that people can do now to connect and build community, even if we're physically distant? And, you know, again, I can't even imagine being on the show Survivor, what you experienced and what you went through, and how lonely that could have been, because it was physically taxing and mentally taxing. And again, the metaphors between your cancer journey and your competitive reality TV journey are eerie.
Yes, they are.
what's it been like now? I mean, you went back to the show, I mean, 18 years later, 19 years later, you know, I mean, you still
Gray.
but you know, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, just so you know, like I got back July 15th, maybe 16th, and I was at Pelotonia August 1st. I mean, I felt I was really thin. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but basically what's happening on the show Survivor now, like I played in 2001, I played in 2004, and like this might get a little nerdy for everyone, but if you got survivors out there, fans out there, you kind of know what I'm talking about. But like I didn't play, I played at a time when the game was like in slow motion. There's no clues or idols or ways to get back in the game. And now what's going on now in the game on CBS, like these days, is when you get voted off the show, you don't go home. You go to this place called the Edge of Extinction. So
The
right
edge
now,
of extinction.
the edge of extinction, which to many cancer survivors, we've been there. We've been to the edge of extinction and we battled back. And on the edge of extinction, on the show Survivor, it's purgatory. It's your life between life in the game and life out of the game. And there are a few chances to get yourself back into the main game. So there's just a little bit of hope alive. So here you are in the middle of this game of Survivor. You're on the edge of extinction, and there's just a drop of hope. And you don't know what form that hope's going to come in. It could be an idol, it could be clues, fire tokens, whatever that is. But that small hope, that's all I needed to stay out there and stick it out, because it is miserable out there. You're not eating, you're not sleeping, you're cold, you're away from your family. You want to be friends with these people, but you can't trust anyone because friendship's based on trust, and I got to vote them out, and they got to come back, and they got to like me. There's just all these complexities. But my advice is just like in cancer, if you can keep yourself alive long enough, you just don't know what's around the corner. A new clinical trial, a new drug, a new cure. And that's like incredible, like exactly what Pelotonia is doing, funding cancer research. Like when I was out there on the edge of extinction, I hope to get back in the game or have these chances. When I was going through cancer, I was on an experimental new drug, and I was just hoping it would keep me alive. And so those parallels are pretty similar. Maybe I'm stretching it a little bit. I don't know. No. But it was weird. I when I was out there, I was if you watched last night's episodes or 2 nights ago, I was in a really dark place. I really was. And they showed it, which I wasn't so happy about. But I was like crying. And because it gets dark at 5 p.m., it gets light at 6 a.m., you got 12 hours of darkness, and you just get in your own head. And I'm away from all my creatured comforts, like my wife and my cats and my cannabis. You know, like here I am in the middle of this thing, and you're just ruminate, and the anxiety and the fear. And I thought I was giving myself cancer again just because of what I was doing to my body. And I just got all freaked out. And I took into consideration what I'd been through before, what I was going through them. And I implemented some of the techniques that I used when I was in isolation and when I was used going through cancer out there on the show. I was meditating, I was chanting, trying to stay positive. I was speaking with some friends out there, and so that really was helpful.
Amazing. Well, it's a good segue. We're getting some questions from the audience. Feel free to ask a question at the bottom of your screen. You can hit the Ask a Question button. But our good friend Drew, who it's great to not necessarily see his face, but to see his icon and the red heart, asked if basically during your lowest time, did you learn anything about yourself that you didn't know previously?
What I did learn is I learned probably for the first time how to ask for help. I was a guy, a jock, I can do this, strong guy. And I didn't really want to reach out and ask for help from my friends and family because I thought I could do it myself. And it took a lot for me to kind of drop my ego, get over myself, and really ask for help because I needed it. And that help came in a lot of different forms. But I thought I could do it all myself, and I really couldn't. And so that was something I learned about myself. It was a humbling experience, but in the end, it was really good. I learned how to communicate better with my friends and family, which I wasn't always as good at. I think there's nothing more empowering than the truth when you're fighting cancer. Often the thoughts and feelings that a cancer fighter is having are the same as the caregivers, like fear, anxiety, maybe happy, sad, scared. all that stuff going through. That's exactly what my mom and my brothers and my community around me was going through. And we just didn't talk about it. But once we started talking about it and opened up that pathway for connection and communication, it was so much better. And it was such a smoother path to bring me to health. And it took everyone to bring me back to perfect health. And that's why it's so important to have community. And I mean, that's why Peloton is incredible. The community you guys have created is off the charts. So yeah, I lean on your friends and your community around you and get rid of that ego.
Thanks for being a part of the Pelotonia community and so many other communities. I mean, you give back in significant ways. Just on that thread, you know, having ridden a few times now, and yes, you were a little skinny last what was the experience like? Like, what were the highlights in terms of being out on the road and meeting people and just getting to know the community here?
Well, not being from your community and from Ohio, I grew up in Massachusetts, living in New Hampshire now, it was instant connection. I showed up and I was wearing my Survivor jersey, and I think I borrowed your bike and shoes, and it was instant connection. It was instant community. Like, we are all in this together. You know, your branding is perfect. You're one team, one goal. And for me to ride the streets and have people cheering for me, high fives as long as I didn't crash, you know, is just inspiring. You know, you got cancer fighters there, cancer survivors, doctors, nurses, just regular community people, everyone rallying around Pelotonia and the James, coming together for a common cause. It's a feeling that I don't think too many people can experience unless you do it yourself. And it was a little overwhelming at times because perfect strangers, they're out there riding their bike, their bums hurts, they're chafing 100 miles, 50 miles, all to raise money for cancer research that could fund a drug that could save my life. Like, to me, that's inspiring. And I don't know, I think that's just as humans, it's a really inspiring moment for me to be there and see that and witness that and feel it.
That's awesome. Well, I know the community here appreciates it, and you know, so many survivors who got to meet you and hear your story and then see you on the road. I mean, that's a powerful connection. Somebody has asked me to describe what these green arrows are behind me. I will grab this. This is a new coffee table book, if you haven't seen it, called "What's Your Arrow?" Last year, we asked the community to design arrows, and they submitted their designs and what it meant to them. And so this book has hundreds of examples from the community. It's available on the website, and as you may have heard, 100% of all the profit from our merchandise sales is now being directed to feeding and providing resources for frontline healthcare workers during this time of need. So that's what this book is, and it's pretty powerful, and it's an example of how people express their creativity for something bigger than any one of us. So another question that came in, Ethan, is how do you take care of yourself physically when you live in New Hampshire, so you're already fairly remote, for those who aren't aware, and with the winter and with the current isolation situation, you know, what are you doing to take care of yourself physically?
Good question. Well, if you saw right behind here, I got my indoor cycling bike that I'm using all the time. I moved out of New York City. I moved to the middle of the woods in New Hampshire because I just, I wanted to grow my own tomatoes. I'd never done it before. And so, we live in a nice little rural area. We heat our house with wood. We have a well. We grow vegetables. So for me to get out of the city and connect with nature was a huge part of my recovery. So that's one way that I'm keeping myself fit and sane, is just to connect with nature. It's a little hippy dippy, but made me feel good. But I do, I work out, I ride my bike, I jog, I eat fairly well, I guess you could say. And in New Hampshire, it's tough sometimes because in the winters, it's getting dark at 4:15, 4:30 p.m. And it's really, some days I'm in bed by 6. Like, I don't even realize. I feel like it's been dark for 8 days. And so that's kind of how I get fit. Inside, I take vitamin D, I do multivitamins, I use CBD on a daily basis that helps me deal with my anxiety. And so that's kind of how I stay fit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know that mental health for you has been a big part of your life, and sort of how you have this so public, visible personality, and yet you need your own time to sort of retreat and be not alone, but sort of be somewhat remote in your thoughts and activities. And I think I've always respected that about you. One of the questions just came in was, how did we meet originally? And I am struggling to remember exactly. I mean, it was so many years ago.
I want to feel it was a Brown University soccer connection, that when I was first diagnosed, you were already, well beyond it and working with another organization that's sport related. And I think we met through that organization.
I think that's right. Somebody else has just recently posted a question. They're saying, while you're at home during this time, other than watching Survivor, what other content are you watching? What shows, what movies, like what content are you engaging with? Nothing on Wednesday nights, I know, but
nothing. The whole day's block, I just watch it on a loop over and over and over again. Well, I most recently just watched that documentary called Tiger King, which was really exciting. I happen to enjoy reality television, maybe a little bit too much. I'm not proud of some of the shows that I'm into, but they take my mind a little bit away. I like Bravo television shows, if people are familiar with those. I actually like the reality shows where you actually need a skill to win, like Project Runway or Top Chef or something along those lines. Yeah, that's kind of where I am right now.
Tiger King is the talk of our office. I actually just watched the first episode last night. I mean, I actually can't wait to get back to it tonight. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that. Jill, who introduced us today, I mean, she was sort of on my case yesterday. You got to watch it. You got to watch it. It's pretty awesome. I mean, what is the experience like? And I know we'll end soon, but what is the experience like when you see the episodes on TV? I mean, is it surreal?
It's totally surreal because, like, you play the game, and I'm playing it through obviously my game and my lens. I only know what I know, and I was trying to make moves and decisions, but they weren't working. But now I get to see why. Because you get to see what everyone else is saying about you, which you don't have that information when you're playing the game. So for me, that was really fun and interesting. There was a moment on the show on episode 4 where I competed in a challenge. It was the log challenge, which was basically we had to collect 20 logs at the top of a mountain and bring them back to our camp one by one. And we had until sundown. We started, I think, at 6 a.m. or something. We had till sundown to get it done. It was pretty rigorous. I ended up not doing so well. I passed out. I may or may not have pissed all over myself. And the medical had to come, and it was just this realization that my body just wasn't as strong as it once was when I was 27 years old playing the game. But the beautiful part about that moment was there's 3 other women there, and they actually walked me up the last leg of the challenge to get to the top of the mountain and then brought me back down. And like, no one wants to go up there at all, not even once a day. And they went up there one extra time to help take care of me. So like, even in the middle of this really horrible cutthroat game of Survivor where people are stabbing each other in the back and voting each other off, there was that human moment. And I mean, bottom line is Survivor is a game of relationships. It's about people and who we are as humans, and compassion and empathy was still there even in the middle of the game. So that was a beautiful moment for me in the middle of this crazy game of Survivor that's going on right now.
It's so interesting because I've heard you speak over the years at different events, and oftentimes people ask you, what are the relationships like among the people who competed? And I've heard you talk about people who you competed with and who you, in some cases, sort of despised during those moments, and who might be totally different than you, but you're now, some of them are your closest friends, and you sort of lived through that journey together. And I think that's some of the camaraderie we see with cancer patients and their loved ones and their networks, because when you experience something so overwhelming in some cases, those are the people that you bond with. And I think this current experience that we're going through as a community, as a city, as a state, as a country, as a world, will result in some of those new friendships and relationships. I don't know if you want to touch on that as we before we close out.
Well, yeah, I mean, Survivor is a game of relationships. It's how you interact with other people that determine how well and how far you're going to go in that game. And the purpose of the game of Survivor is, they're plucking 20 people from all walks of life, all over the country, to come together to play this game. So, of course, in any natural situation, you're not going to like every single person you're in the room with, right? But you have to, kind of, in this game in order to get forward. So there was a quote that, Abraham Lincoln says, "I do not like that man. Therefore, I must get to know him better." And there were times out there where I really didn't necessarily like the people I was trying to work with. But if I got to know them better, it kind of gives you this bridge to understanding. It gives you the empathy. It gives you the opportunity to understand where this person came from and why they may be communicating or interacting with you in a certain way. And then you can work together in a better fashion if you kind of understand each other better. And so I tried to use that philosophy when going through. But this whole CBS and Survivor has done a really good job putting my cancer story front and center. Like, I'm not going to lie, like, it's definitely part of my story on the show ever. And I feel that's important. I feel it's, I'm lucky to be able to be on the show and be able to talk about my cancer journey, more specifically about after cancer, the survivorship, the fear, the anxiety that comes along with it, and to be able to share those details on national television and hopefully, like, maybe help other people out there. And that the cancer community has been so supportive of me. It's been overwhelming. It's incredibly emotional. Like, I get messages from people from Pelotonia who rode with me. They're like, "Oh, I rode with you and I just saw you on Survivor. Like, incredible job. You're doing awesome. Thanks for sharing your story." That makes it worth it to share your story and to be, public or communicate with everyone about what's really going on. And I think it's a beautiful moment in the show.
Well, you do it well, and you make sure to sort of integrate that story in everything that you do, which I think is admirable. And I also think, for those who don't know, you founded an organization called Grassroots Soccer with the winnings from your first Survivor Africa. And, the work that organization has done and continues to do is groundbreaking. And so it's in your DNA. And I think whether it's you sharing it or whether it's Survivor and CBS sharing it, you have a platform and you're leveraging it to the best of your ability to impact the lives of others. And I think that is incredibly admirable. And it's an honor to know you. The Pelotonia community is proud of you. We hope to have you back every year and riding with us. And I guess I'll just close with one last question for you to address. And that is, what do you say to the patients at the James, the doctors, the nurses, the healthcare workers, the people who are on the front lines right now, not only taking care of those with cancer, but also dealing with the added burden and anxiety around COVID-19? What's your message to them?
I guess I know being a survivor is it's not about the diagnosis or anything. It's about how you embrace the rest of your life, what you do with your time and who you surround yourself with. And like, for me, that includes my friends, my family, my wife, and that stuff. So for people who are on the front lines and helping those in need, like, one, thank you, obviously. Got to get back to, we are all in this together. We can all come together. And I just obviously want to encourage those who are healthy to think about those that are unhealthy and are in vulnerable situations right now, because I think I'm incredibly thankful that I'm not in treatment right now, because I'd be totally scared and fearful of those what if scenarios. If I had to go to the hospital, I had to get treatment, or something was stopped because of what's going on with the virus. So let's all do our part. Let's all try to help each other around us, create a community that is healthy, so we can all show up and ride in August. But more just thank you for everyone. And I appreciate what everyone's doing for those in need.
Well, Ethan, thank you for taking the time. We're, again, grateful for everything you do for Pelotonia, for the cancer community, for grassroots soccer, for the world at large. You know, this is a trying time for everyone. And I think having empathy, having community, and continuing to find ways to reach out to one another is going to be so critical. I also want to just thank my colleagues at Pelotonia and everybody who's tuned in today. You know, over the last few weeks, we've seen some remarkable actions, people going above and beyond, sort of diverting resources, changing plans, and adapting to the new world that we live in. And it's going to take all of us to do more and more of that. And Pelotonia will surely do our part, whether it's through research, whether it's through providing meals and resources to healthcare workers and their families. Whatever it is that we can do in this time of need, we will do so, and we'll do it together. Because as you said, we are all in this together. Thank you all very much for joining us. Stay tuned next week for another Pelotonia Live with the James Chief Medical Officer, Dr. David Cohn, who's also ridden every single Pelotonia, and he'll be giving us an update on everything going on at the James, as well as the relationship between COVID-19 and the cancer community. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend.